Self-improvement is supposed to work. If you read the right books, build the right habits, stay disciplined, your life is supposed to get better. But for many men, they're doing all of this and something still seems off. Because for many men, self-improvement is not actually solving the true problem. A lot of men reach a moment where something in their life doesn't seem quite right anymore. On paper, everything seems fine. We're showing up, we're going to work, we're doing everything that we're supposed to do. But underneath it all, there's this quiet dissatisfaction. Sometimes it shows up as loneliness. Sometimes it's just this nagging ache that we're not quite the man we're meant to be. And so we do what any good man would do in this situation. We try to improve ourselves. And so we find books to read, podcasts to listen to, videos to watch to try to find those life hacks so that we can improve our life. And then sometimes this is successful. Sometimes it does help for a while, but then that ache returns. Because while we're trying to improve ourselves, sometimes the issue is not self-improvement, but one of formation. Self-improvement assumes that we already know who we are and what we want. And the only thing holding us back is a lack of knowledge or skills or discipline to be successful. But many men, we don't know who we are or what we want or what our strength is for. And so we pick up all of these improvement hacks, but we end up optimizing for the wrong life. We're grinding toward success, but it's not our success. We end up living someone else's life rather than the life that God has given us. Where self-improvement and formation are asking different questions. Self-improvement is trying to improve the life that we already have. And this is great if we're living the life that God has called us to live. Where formation is asking us, are we living the life that God has called us to live? After years of working with men, I started noticing something. That real change didn't happen randomly. It happened over the course of movements that men had to go through in order to discover their true selves and to live the life that God has called them to live. You can call these movements or you call them stages, but I started to recognize that men must rise, to recognize, to initiate, to sacrifice, and to enjoy. To recognize is simply discovering and remembering who God has called us to be and the deep desires that He's placed within our heart. To initiate is then to take that step forward, to not live in passivity, but to take that step forward in faith toward the life that He's called us to live. To sacrifice is to give up our life, to surrender to God's larger story, to God's larger purpose. So we're no longer living for ourselves, but to sacrifice for something meaningful, something noble, something eternal. And then to enjoy is to bask in the joy and the pleasure that God has for us. That life is not just about grinding and working, that He has the abundance of joy for us as well. And enjoy reminds us to live as the true sons of God, to enjoy the feast that He has prepared for us, even now. When we reach that moment, when we realize something in our life is not quite right, that maybe we're living someone else's script, living their expectations on us, and it no longer seems to fit, we're ready to start recognizing, to start waking up to the deeper movements that God has put in our hearts. And recognize is the moment where we slow down enough to start giving a true examination of our life. Not to analyze it per se, but to sit with it, to discover what God has placed already in our souls. But to do that, we have to listen to the signals present. And so when dissatisfaction comes up, it's not simply dismissing that dissatisfaction, but learning to listen to it. What makes us dissatisfied right now, and what's beneath that dissatisfaction? What will bring deeper satisfaction, not in a selfish, self-serving sort of way, but listening deeper in what is that true holy desire that God has placed within our hearts. When we're lonely, instead of just rushing to be around people, what is that loneliness telling us? That sometimes that loneliness is letting us know that we've not allowed ourselves to be fully seen, to be fully known in someone else's presence. And so we're lonely because they don't know us, and we don't know how to give ourselves to them because we don't know who we are first. And so that loneliness is letting us know that we need to do our work. We need to discover who we are so that we can then give ourselves to others. so that we can share our vulnerable hearts with them and fully be known by them. What are those deep desires in our heart? We're not trying to make up desires, as it were, or trying to adopt someone else's desires, but those aches in our moment, those things that we want to do, can we listen? Can we discern? Is there a holy desire that God has placed within our heart, a seed that simply needs attention, that simply needs watering, that simply needs some cultivation? Many times we've spent so long being responsible that we've lost connection with our true desires, that we know how to work, we know how to grind, but we don't know how to ask what we actually long for. Who's the man that we're becoming? What are those things that we want to build as an expression of our true and holy desires? Recognizes when we start to reconnect with those desires, to reconnect with the deep movements of our heart. And we can ignore those desires. We can ignore these signals. But that means we're just redoubling our efforts at work, or distracting ourselves with various entertainments, or we can keep taking on these self-improvement projects, but to no end. We pick one up, but it leads nowhere, and we get frustrated, we get tired, we get worn out, always trying to improve ourselves, but never being formed. But if we can pause and listen, something new begins to emerge. Our journey toward becoming men who are strong and grounded and passionate and alive usually moves through 4 stages: recognize, initiate, sacrifice, and enjoy. And our first step is simply pausing to recognize.